Updated for 2023, the Triton Contractor Saw Module builds on the capability of the world's most convenient portable work centre, the TWX7. So today I'm going to unbox one and take you through the setup and assembly steps. Let's go. Whether you've got a fixed setup like I do, or one on the go, the Triton Workcentre delivers awesome results in an ultra-portable modular package. Unbox the saw and make sure all the components are present and in good condition. You can refer to the manual for a complete list of what you should get in the box. Some things will be placed in pockets inside the packaging. Be sure to check all of these thoroughly, as you'll need everything in the box. Once you've removed the outer packaging, place your new saw into your Workcentre and lock it in place. New to the Contractor Saw 2 is a 60-tooth blade with a laser-cut rim and harmonic slots. This replaces the original saw's 40-tooth blade, so you can achieve finer cuts straight out of the box. New regulation requires a perfectly flat surface, so drop the plastic filler plates into place and fix the screws down. Small cams in the table will help you line up the saw module perfectly with the table. Simply loosen the bolts and manoeuvre the cams as necessary. You should also use the small hex head grub screws set into the cast aluminium to make sure the saw module is sitting perfectly flush with the surface of the table. Next, we're going to assemble the fence. If you're upgrading from a Contractor Saw 1, you need to remove the old fence clamps from the tracks on your Workcentre. The Contractor Saw 2 comes with an all-new rip fence with a single-point locking mechanism. This allows rapid setup and adjustment up to a max rip capacity of 850mm. Take the three arms of the fence assembly and lay them into a C pattern, so that the arms with scales on them are at opposite sides. These must be orientated so that the marked letters L and R are readable from the outside of the C shape. Using the 4 bolts provided and your hex key, start to assemble the arm structure. Make sure that the bridge of the C has the round side facing downward. Be sure not to over-tighten the bolts, because we'll need these to be a little loose before we fix the arms in place. These arms are shaped so that they slide into the aluminium tracks on the edge of your Workcentre. Likewise, there's a track underneath these arms, into which you'll need to slide the 2 cam clamps, one on each side, positioned so that when open, the clamp arm points outward. Next, you'll need to decide which side of the blade you wish to cut on. In my setup, I'm always going to be cutting to the right-hand side, so that's the side I'm going to put the fence on. Don't worry about lining it up perfectly and leave the cam clamps undone for now. We'll lock this once we've calibrated it. Depending on your global region, for example Europe versus the US, you might get a second scale provided in the box which you can stick on. If you don't have one of these scales and the matching instructional sheets, please skip to the next section. The timestamps will be in the description below. One scale lets you cut either side of the blade, and the other maximises the amount that you can measure with the fence. I'm going to be doing lots of rip cutting, so I'm going to use this one. First, clean the existing scale, ideally using mineral spirits or rubbing alcohol, and wipe it dry. Once happy with its positioning, remove the adhesive strip and press down firmly. We'll start with the right-hand side, so take the new scale marked R and place it exactly on top of the old scale so that the arrow is pointing toward the fence. Repeat this with the scale marked L. Now we're going to calibrate the fence. So if you stand on the in-feed side of the table, with your orange arrow closest to you, place the fence across the fence assembly so that the locking lever is on the same side that you're on. If the flat side of the fence is backward to where the blade is, then you're going to need to swap the locking arm over to the other side. You must always have the fence orientated so that you lock it from the in-feed side of the table. You can use the 45-degree back of the fence to make 45-degree cuts, but you're not going to be doing that nearly as often as you make standard rip cuts. To flip the fence around, undo the 4 hex bolts and remove the locking arm assembly. From the opposite side, loosen the single locking nut and remove the roller guide from the fence. Now refit these pieces to the fence at the opposite sides to where they started. Once complete, your setup should look something like this. Next, we're going to calibrate the blade. Make sure the blade's raised up out of the saw like this, and then lock the height using the lever. Now change the cutting angle so that it reads 0 and lock it in place. Check the angle using an engineer's square, or ideally a digital angle measurer, and adjust the degree readout underneath by loosening the screw and moving the pointer. When you've got the blade angle locked perfectly square, roll the fence to a position on the table where you've got a straight line reference like this one. When locked, the fence should follow that straight line perfectly. You can adjust how the fence locks using the grub screws in the various parts of the fence locking arm assembly. Roll the fence toward and lock it against the blade. Here you'll get a good idea how well you did calibrating the fence at 90 degrees in the previous step. Adjust it as necessary. We're now going to make sure that the scale on the fence arm closest to you is calibrated. Unlock the fence and pay attention to the measure on the table in front of you. With the fence resting against the blade, shift the fence arm assembly back and forward until you're comfortable that the zero reading on the scale lines up perfectly with the sight. You'll need to move both the front and back fence assembly arms somewhat together to get this right. With the sight at 0 and the fence resting against the blade, lock the cam clamp closest to you into place. Now you don't need to calibrate the far arm in quite the same way, as the roller bearing runs freely on this arm and isn't guided by it. Now tighten up the 4 hex bolts we left loose earlier that are on the ends of the fence arm assembly. Try cutting a piece of scrap to test the accuracy of your work. The first couple of times you run the Contractor Saw 2, it'll be a bit louder and have more vibration than normal. This is because the new carbon brushes are bedding in. We've put an updated motor in the Contractor Saw 2 so it delivers a greater no-load speed from 1800 watts of power. Measure the width of your cut using calipers and make minor adjustments to the sight as necessary. You might need to move the arms to transport or store the table, or in future you might decide to cut on the other side of the blade. To make the setup a whole lot faster, I've used this old marker to line it up with the 0 as my reference point. This comes with the table and used to be used with the old Contractor Saw 1 that we're replacing. Undo the 2 screws that hold this marker in place and place a steel rule or similar reliable straight edge across the 0 scale with the end flat against the table. You can now use this as a quick reference when recalibrating your saw. Now it's time to fit the crown guard. Disconnect the saw's plug underneath the table. Unlock the curved plate lock and lift it away. New for the Contractor Saw 2, a multi-position riving knife allows easy setup and remains in place during through and trench cuts. Twist the lock and pull the riving knife up until it locates in its highest position. Refit the lock and replace the curved plate. For the new Contractor Saw, a redesigned crown guard improves visibility and fully encloses the blade for improved dust extraction. We'll first add the anti-kickback pulls. Unlock the cam and locate the pin into the furthest back of the 3 riving knife indents. Finally, add the crown guard the same way. Undo the cam behind the vertical extraction port and locate it into the middle of the 3 indents. Lock the cam down and lower the arms. The crown should rest like this. Make sure nothing is touching the blade. Try running a piece of wood across under either side of the guard to ensure it's working correctly. So there you have it. That's how to set up your Triton Contractor Saw 2. If you found the video helpful, please give us a like. See you in the next one.